Tonight we have with us Collette Marie, the artist who was selected to design the artwork for the I25 University project. Welcome, Collette. It's really great to have you with us. And I think it's really wonderful that a local artist was selected to do this project, and you are definitely a local.
Yes, I am. This is my hometown, and I'm actually really honored to have my work showcased here, and in such a big way.
Should we start off with you giving us a little bit of background about how you decided to pursue a career in art and graphics?
I had always wanted to take a photography class, so I went over to the art department for a while, and I would hear the students talking about their critiques, and it just sounded really fun. There was a really great energy in the art department that I wanted to be a part of, so I ended up switching into the arts, and I ended up getting a degree in photography and graphic design.
Oh. You had an exhibit at the Farm and Ranch Museum, which I saw, and I thought it was really terrific. A lot of plants and animals and native things that are iconic images around for our area, and I thought it was really a great exhibit. And I think we're very, very lucky to have your talent on this project.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the themes that you have going on in the graphics that you designed for the I25 University project.
Well, the prospectus had some guidelines from the committee that called for particular themes on certain areas of the bridge design. And so the I-25 side, they wanted to have a Las Cruces theme, and then over on the NMSU side, they wanted an NMSU theme and with some elements of Southwest design mixed into all of that. Mm-hmm. But one of the main concepts that I was working with was an earth and seed pattern that I developed. And that is basically symbolic of, academic growth and literally planting seeds in the ground to cultivate crops and plants.
So earth and seed, and you have some rather wavy kind of like fields of furrowed ground with the seeds that are getting planted and things like that. And that's kind of in the background. And then you have these larger close-up looks, if you will, of some of the plants and animals. So let's we can talk a little bit about those. But I notice very, very obviously you didn't pick a roadrunner. I mean, I think we see a lot of roadrunners and all sorts of murals and designs and things like that, particularly in our area. But you picked something else. What did you pick besides the roadrunner, or instead of rather the roadrunner?
Instead of the greater roadrunner, I selected the New Mexico whiptail lizard.
The New Mexico whiptail lizard, and why particularly did you pick that?
Well, you see a lot of representation of the roadrunner everywhere. It's a really great bird. I can't deny that. But the whiptail lizard doesn't really get in the limelight very often, so I decided to feature her, especially since she is the New Mexico state reptile.
Right. I didn't know that New Mexico had a state reptile. Of course, we know about the roadrunner as the state bird, and the yucca is the state flower. State cookie is the bizcochito. Yeah. And of course, the state question, red or green. Right, and we'll talk about chili a little bit later.
Yes, I wanted to include some desert plants that we have here in Las Cruces and in the Southwest. The ocotillo being one, which I feel is underappreciated. It's a really beautiful, it's not a cacti, people think it is a cactus, but it's actually a bush, and the agave is a bush as well. So I featured the blooms of both the agave and the ocotillo, and you'll see on the branches of the agave bloom, you'll see that there's a song sparrow there, which is actually a tribute to my grandmother, because early on she saw my passion for creating art, and so she was a key role in fostering that passion.
And she was a lover of birds. That's great. We do have some wonderful birds around this area. And that century plant, or the agave plant, those blooms, when the sprout comes up and it has those blooms, it's quite spectacular.
It's beautiful.
It really is.
You can see many images on Instagram and Facebook when people,
when
the blooms come out, and especially with the ocotillos too, you see pictures everywhere.
Right. And of course, like you say, people think it's a cactus, and it looks like most of the year it's kind of like just these spiny sticks sticking up out of the ground. But then, of course, when the rains come, it gets these leaves and these really beautiful blooms. I think I read somewhere it's kind of referred to sometimes as the candle of the desert because it lights up like the flame is the red color, and it's so bright. It's really beautiful. All right, so what about, there's some other images that you've come up with. Can you want to talk about some of those other things that you've put in there?
Well, on the I25 side, because we experience so much sun with our weather here, I wanted to have something that was representative of that. So I used what I created calling it a sun disk on the side of the gateways, and then also on the pedestrian railing I used a sunburst. And those are basically drawn from some popular Southwest geometric shapes and images that you'll see here around these parts.
Right. We could talk a little bit about some of the images that you have.
Well, for the NMSU side, so the bridge is kind of broken up into different sections, and like I said, there's the I-25 side, and then the gateway that will be heading into the university. And so on the NMSU side, I wanted to, since NMSU is an agricultural college or university and started out that way, I wanted to include crops. And so I selected some major crops around this area, and I chose the pecan and the cotton and of course chili, since we love chili. We can't go without our chili here in Las Cruces. It's part of our culture. It's part of our heritage.
Right. So we have the chili, and of course NMSU, very important in the development of the chili pods. I mean, they started, Fabian Garcia, who was considered the father of the modern chili movement, if you will, was working with different strains of chili as far back as 1888. And so very important, and the New Mexico Chili Institute is located at MSU. So obviously we want to probably try to represent the chili that we love so much. So it's my understanding that there's something about pecans and the pecan trees in the NMSU master plan that inspired you to include the pecan trees and the pecans in your design?
Yes, actually I'd like to read to you something from the master plan which helped me decide to include the pecans. To reinforce campus entry and identity, the planting of pecan trees is proposed to continue along all major campus entry drives. These campus entries provide opportunities for identity marking, which will help NMSU achieve greater visibility in the community and provide clear signals that tell visitors to where to enter campus.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to have, the pecans and the pecan leaf, as you see in that design there, sort of like as the same as they're using on campus. They have sort of an identity mark and a signal that's saying, hey, you're coming onto campus.
Coming into NMSU, right. So let's see, well, we talked about chili and cotton, of course, a very important crop here, and onions. I have a relation through marriage that grows a lot of onions and these other things, and I worked summer in the onion sheds myself, and I know that a lot of work and a lot of onions are produced in this area. So. And
you can't miss the smell when they're
when they're blooming. Can't. And I had a hard time getting it off me after I worked in the onion sheds for quite some time. So, anything else that we'd like to cover that we might have missed somewhere in our discussion about any of your designs or your concepts or anything like that?
Well, I just wanted to say that I wanted to implement larger-than-life imagery to create an immersive art experience for the viewer. So you have these, exceptionally giant crops, chili and cotton, as you're like driving through them, as opposed to seeing, just small little plants on the side of the road. And I also wanted to bring rural elements to an urban landscape. And so people passing through can say, hey, well, this is, I'm getting a little bit of an idea of the culture and the desert life plants that are here in New Mexico and in Las Cruces in particularly.
Right. Kind of talk about the process that you went through to be selected to do the artwork.
I signed up for a newsletter on a website called Cafe, and so they send out these calls for artists, and I actually missed the call, and a friend saw it and sent it to me at the last minute. It was like maybe 4 days before the call was closing. And so I literally spent like 4 days and, nights just working and trying to get my submission ready for, it was a resume, and I had to do a online portfolio and an annotated list of images, and so I was just basically like scrambling to get everything together at the last minute and submit it by, I think it was a Monday. So I made it just in the nick of time.
Another fortunate thing that happened. Collette would like to thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for having me.